All right, I think I just saw a little red dot, so we're good. Okay. All right, so just to give a brief overview of our agenda for today, we will have introductions and housekeeping, well, which is what we just had by myself. Um, Followed by that, we will have an overview of the Amplify program, which is one of AATCLC's projects by Ernesta Wright. We'll have an overview of the Finishing the Fight program by Carol Magruder. We'll give a little bit of background and context for those who are new to the field of tobacco control through an overview of most relevant tobacco control issues, especially as they pertain to the African American community. We'll go over the purpose of the Community Engagement Activity Award, why you all are here today, as well as eligibility requirements. We'll review the application so you all have a chance to see that before you tackle it on your own. And then that will segue us into our question and answer section. All right, so to just give a little bit more information and introduction about the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council, we were formed in 2008 by co-chairs Carol Magruder and Philip Gardner. And the purpose of AATCLC is to just foster a legacy of physical, mental, and spiritual wellness by supporting our Black communities across California. We educate the African American community about tobacco use and cessation. We partner with community stakeholders, such as you all on the call right now, and public health agencies to inform and affect the direction of tobacco control policy practices and priorities as it affects the lives of Black American as well as African immigrant populations. So here are our faces. We have our co-chair, Carol Magruder, who is on the call today with us and who will be guiding us through the majority of the application details. Our other co-chair, Dr. Philip Gardner, who is not here with us today, but who is always behind the scenes doing his part to make sure that the tobacco control work goes on. We also have here today Tracy Brown, who is our Finishing the Fight project manager. Yolande Burris is not with us, I don't think, today, but she is the Amplify project coordinator. Myself, Nicole Turkson, I am the special project liaison working primarily with Finishing the Fight. And then we also have Ernesta Wright, who is the community engagement coordinator with Amplify. So at this point, I'll go ahead and pass it to Ernesta to give us a brief overview of the Amplify program.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to share with you about what Amplify does and give a little bit of background. The African American Coordinating Center provides cultural relevant expert support and tailored assistance to tobacco control programs, non-traditional partners, and the greater community. We're working to engage the African American community, the African immigrant community, to be more involved in this movement. Our mission is to work collectively in love, unity, and cultural humility to educate, to empower, and to engage our communities to end the commercial tobacco use. And some of a program of the leadership development program of AMP Up. It is a program aimed to build leaders as we educate our people and help them gain access to many career opportunities in the fields of public health, tobacco control, media research, evaluation, and much more. We have free programs for students, young adults, seasoned professionals, and the AMP Up program also coordinates cohorts, and that we're on our third one, which is our faith leaders. And the things that we do with Amplify is supporting the No Menthol Sundays, support spoken word events, joint webinars with the Center of African American Focus Groups, community partnerships, where we also support Juneteenth celebrations throughout California, mental health, suicide prevention, infant mortality, NAACP or sororities, fraternity events, and we also like to have fun as well. We celebrate statewide regional partners. There are about 6. There's Riverside County Black Chamber of Commerce, also the Now Sisters Development Initiative, the Youth Leadership Initiative in Central Valley. We also have African Communities Public Health. And we also have the Soul Project in the Gold Country. So we have support organizations that are very supportive and also engaged in our communities. And then lastly, the AMP Up program is, as I mentioned, that was tailored to leadership development. It also contains 10 to 12 leadership fellows per cohort. We do statewide recruitment, community and young people to be encouraged to apply. And there's definitely virtual leadership academy where there's personal development, and then there's virtual classes. Also, we have the experience of all those that Nicole have mentioned. And so Amplified is here to amplify our voices, also to foster a legacy of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Thank you. And I will now yield my time to Nicole or to Carol.
Okay. I think I'm going to take over now and talk about finishing the fight. So yes, thank you. All right. Okay, great, Nicole. So the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council, we fought very hard for Prop 56, which was the last tobacco tax that was passed, that added $2 per pack to each cigarettes and also something comparable to e-cigarettes. And through that tax, the programs that you see are funded. So these are programs that are funded through the California Department of Public Health, the California Tobacco Control Program. And there are 2 arms of this. And so the people who are applying for these community engagement awards, depending on what you want to do, you're going to be assigned to work with either Finishing the Fight or with Amplify. And I like to say that Amplify is our loving arm. It's our supportive arm to love and embrace our community in a spirit of wholeness. And so we're looking at the bigger picture, not just smoking and telling someone don't smoke. That's not even what we do. And then we have this side, which is the Finishing the Fight. So we're fighters, and I tell people I'm a street fighter with a smile, and we are aiming to knock out commercial tobacco. With this grant, we work on public policy. We work on helping our community to understand that tobacco is the #1 killer of Black people, killing 45,000 Black people every year, that tobacco use touches every aspect of our lives. Whether you are a smoker or not, you are touched in so many ways that you don't even know. And so there are 3 or 4 main goals to Finishing the Fight. One is to continue the work that we do to support policy around restricting the sale of mentholated and all flavored tobacco products. We also are going to be giving some attention to little cigars and cigarillos, those Swisher Sweets and Black and Milds, and little cigars that our young people smoke and that are oftentimes combined with cannabis to make blunts. And we also have an innovative section where we have an exhibit that's curated by Tracy Brown, who's on the call, that really will document our history with the tobacco industry and all that has gone on, because we were actually brought here enslaved to work on tobacco before cotton became very popular in the Western world. And so we're also engaging the international treaty, the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, because what has been done to Black people with regards to commercial tobacco predation is in violation of many international treaties, and we deserve to actually be a protected class from the tobacco industry. And so that piece of it is also part of Finishing the Fight. So as this is a lot of information, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but this is not a competitive process, it's a supportive process. So as we're talking, what I'm hoping is that the organizations that are on the call will think about how this could work in what you're already doing, because this is not a lot of money. So we're not going to burden you with trying to change a community norm with $3,000. That's impossible. But we want to think about what do you do? What is your interest? And how can we intersect tobacco control and assist you while you're working and collaborating with us into what you're already doing. So that's Finishing the Fight. And so this is for the fighters. And then if you're for the lovers, we have Amplify. Okay. Nicole.
All right. Thank you so much, Carol and Ernesta. Um, just like they were saying, we have the loving arm and the more ferocious fighting arm of our um, program. So when you're completing the application, you will be asked a few questions that will kind of gear you or indicate which project you'll be better geared to working with. So to kind of continue and provide more information about AATCLC's platform, I just kind of wanted to overview briefly. And so Carol may have touched on a few things, but just to reiterate, the main aspects of the platform are the prohibition of the sale of menthol and other flavored tobacco products. Um, if you're a Black person and you smoke, almost 9 times out of 10, you smoke a menthol cigarette. And so that flavoring in particular has been exempted from a lot of public health policy that's designed to protect people. And so our community is not able to benefit from reduced smoking rates and reduced effects, whether physical or otherwise, from not using these products and being addicted to them as intensely. So we want to protect our children by making tobacco use and predatory marketing of flavored tobacco products one of the top 5 priorities facing our community. We have a lot of things going on, especially in the Black community right now, that are compounded by COVID, you know, housing insecurity, joblessness. But we can't forget about tobacco because that really impacts our lives, especially now. And we cannot afford to make it one of our lower priorities on the list. So we want to work within our own organizations and religious institutions to mount a sustained and comprehensive campaign against the tobacco industry and advocate for adoption of non-acceptance of tobacco industry sponsorship and contribution policies. The tobacco industry is notorious for infiltrating our community organizations, including the National Action Network, just to name one. And so accepting funds from these organizations is just kind of, it's a conflict of interest because if our priority is the health of our community, we cannot really be in collaboration with these industry giants who profit off of our being addicted to their products. We need to understand that predatory marketing and tobacco use perpetuate poverty in our communities because, especially now in California, these products are expensive. So, if you're still spending money on cigarettes or other tobacco products, it's really impacting your pocket. We want to hold the tobacco industry responsible for the irreparable harm that has been done to our community because of these products. We want to work with elected officials to develop a comprehensive tobacco control platform that will eventually reduce tobacco related illness and improve health equity in the African American community. We demand adequate funding for tobacco prevention programs and culturally appropriate services to help people stop smoking, especially now, again, with COVID and with people who smoke cigarettes being at an increased risk for more severe cases of COVID-19. It's especially critical that um, we prioritize cessation services so that people can be healthy and have the best chances of protecting themselves against the virus and other conditions. We support raising the price of all tobacco products, especially cheap, unregulated tobacco products that are just overwhelming our Black and Latino communities. Some of these products may be familiar. You've heard them before. They include Black and Milds and Swisher Sweets. And we want to increase the legal purchase age to 21. So we've done this in California, but now the next step is to extend this to other states in the nation. We support and demand smoke-free multi-unit housing and other protections against secondhand smoke exposure. And we advocate for policies that explicitly exclude civil or criminal penalties for use of possession of tobacco products. If our goal is to take tobacco products off of the shelves, we don't want to create this scenario where it's illegal now to possess tobacco products and you can, be targeted by the police, harassed, or what have you. So the way we counter that is by explicitly saying that that's not what is going to happen. So next, we just wanted to show a little teaser trailer from a really wonderful documentary called Black Lives, Black Lungs that provides a more in-depth look into the tobacco issue for African Americans. The full video is about 15 minutes long, which we will not be showing today, but you will be provided with a link to view it in your own time. So in the meantime, please, everyone, tune into this 2-minute video.
3 years ago, I accepted an internship with Truth Initiative. At the time, I thought I knew everything I needed to know about tobacco, but what I knew was just the beginning.
One of the greatest marketing coups that took place in the 20th century is transforming menthol cigarette to a black cigarette.
During my time with Truth Initiative, I read dozens of research articles and stacks of internal documents directly from tobacco industry files. The tobacco industry strategically and successfully infiltrated my community. And while it's true that they targeted many groups, the targeting of the Black community has been uniquely damaging.
So it was good to see Black people in the ads and to see that there were Black models and that people saw that and they were very much attracted to that. It was sort of a double-edged sword.
They do target everybody, but when they target us, we die disproportionately from it.
We know the facts. We have the scientific knowledge that tells us that we die in larger numbers.
Tobacco-related diseases are still the #1 cause of death in the African American community.
47,000 African Americans a year die as a result of tobacco-related diseases.
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% of all African American civil, religious, political, social organizations take money from the tobacco industry.
Behind the scenes, there were negotiations between the leaders of these organizations and tobacco companies.
Because there's money tied to it. And money makes things happen. Because of who we are, our lives are constantly at threat. Black Lives Matter, hands up, don't shoot. I can't breathe. I think we're all answering the same question. What is the worth of a Black body in the United States of America?
Right.
3 years ago,
There we go. All right. Uh-oh. Is my screen still sharing?
No, it's not. So you
No,
just, yeah,
sorry.
you need to go back in and share it.
Okay.
And while she's doing that, I can just add a little commentary. So that Black Lives, Black Lungs, it's on YouTube. So if you just go to YouTube and put in Black Lives, Black Lungs, the whole documentary will come up. It's only about 15 minutes long, but very powerful 15 minutes. And the young man who put that together, he came out to California actually to interview myself and Dr. Phil and Dr. Val. And we were really just doing him a favor because he was so young and sweet to participate. And this documentary has turned into such a phenomenal piece of ammunition that we can use in our work. And so when you're thinking about what you want to do, should you apply, think artistically, think creatively, think out of the box, because we're going to give you some information, and then we want you to come back and say, this is what I would like to do with it. And then we can talk about it before you actually write about it. So there, we want to have a dialogue. We're not gonna say, don't ask us any questions, just figure it out. If you have a conversation, you have an idea, and we can tell you if you're headed in the right direction. So yeah, anytime you want to share your screen back, Nicole, yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Okay. Yes.
All right, well, hopefully people's interests are piqued from that trailer. Highly recommend watching the whole video. And so I just wanted to give a little bit more information to supplement the clip. So one of the biggest things that we like to emphasize is the difference between sacred and commercial tobacco. So commercial tobacco is what we are most familiar with: the cigarettes, the cigars, the swishers, the blunts, and all those things. But actually, tobacco was first cultivated and utilized by Native Americans, and it had very traditional and sacred uses. So Sacred tobacco was used again by Native Americans for millennia. And the use of it, for casual or for personal consumption was actually considered sacrilege. So another big thing to know is that when Native Americans did use tobacco for their traditional ceremonies, as well as African communities, they wouldn't inhale the tobacco smoke for an intoxicating or calming effect. They would just hold it in their mouth before blowing it out. So that just emphasizes again that it wasn't a product that was being abused for its effect on the body. It was used for ceremonial purposes. And so the name, for those who are interested, of the sacred tobacco plant is actually Nicotiniana rustica. And it actually looks different and presents differently than Nicotiniana tabacum, which is the commercial tobacco plant variety that is cultivated and exported for use today. So, like Carol alluded to originally, um, African slaves were first brought to the Americas to pick tobacco and not cotton, which is the popular misconception. So actually, prior to the 17th century, prior to us arriving here, North American Native Americans were the only people who were using tobacco. And when Englishman John Rolfe actually came to the Americas, he learned how to cultivate tobacco and saw basically a business opportunity in it. So when tobacco first made it to Europe, the demand for it skyrocketed, which in turn triggered the demand for African slavery. So the first enslaved people reached America back in 1619. And so it's actually been 402 years since we first arrived on these shores to pick tobacco. And ever since we first arrived, our relationship with it has not ended, it's merely transformed. And instead of picking it, now they want us to smoke it. So after centuries of forced servitude to the tobacco industry, we became one of their major consumers. The tobacco industry began aggressively marketing towards the African American community back in the 1950s. Tobacco industry tactics were incredibly insidious. They were the first industry to positively depict African Americans in the media, especially during that time of major civil unrest and stark racial inequity. So if you look at these images here, you just see um, Black people being happy, and associating that with tobacco products and cigarettes is one of the ways that you start to manipulate people psychologically to think that maybe there's something about these products that really does bring wealth or beauty or just a sense of being cool. And so one of the other issues is that the tobacco industry has again infiltrated some of our major African American leadership organizations. They sponsor these organizations' events, and these tactics have produced a frightening reality for our community. Before I get to that, I just want to touch briefly upon hookah, which is another tobacco product that is becoming more popular amongst African American youth, especially. Tobacco or hookah tobacco is actually smoked using a water pipe, and it originated in North Africa, Middle Eastern time, centuries ago. And it is not a safer alternative to cigarettes. There is a common misconception that because the hookah smoke passes through a water chamber before it's inhaled, that it's somehow purified or better for your lungs, but that is not the case. And in fact, people actually can smoke the equivalent of 100 cigarettes or more during a typical 1 hour hookah session. So imagine all of that nicotine, all of that chemicals that you're intaking. Um, and it's really not a better alternative. So between hookah, between cigarettes, between all these forms of commercial tobacco, We have 45,000 African Americans who are dying each year from tobacco-related diseases. Again, 85% of African American smokers use menthol cigarettes. And to put that into perspective, African Americans were smoking menthols back in 1950 at only 5%. And so the reason why we keep on talking about menthol is because it really does make it easier to get the poison down. Menthol numbs the throat and the mouth, which makes it easier to start smoking cigarettes. Um, and because you're able to inhale deeper into your lungs, you're able to get more nicotine, become more addicted, which makes it even more difficult for you to quit. So that was pretty much a bit of background on the issue, and I'd like to turn it over to Carol to kind of lead us.
Alrighty. Okay, so this is the reason why you're here, why you came. What is the purpose of the Community Engagement Award? So to get funding from the state of California or from our county health departments is oftentimes a giant pursuit that is very difficult for many of our organizations, and it leaves us out. And so these community engagement awards are just a simpler process, less money, but it's a way to get some funding out into our community that we manage and we control, and to help to build the capacity. And that's what this is about. So the purpose of these awards is to strengthen the tobacco control capacity of our nonprofit organizations that are serving our communities. And so we want to stress that this is for African American led and serving groups. So we want to build the capacity of our own institutions, which is part of equity and justice. If you don't have organizations that you control and build, you can never really, we can never really get out of the situation that we currently find ourselves in this country. It's to engage our regular community members in the fight against tobacco industry in the state of California, to integrate commercial tobacco control into the broader context of Black lives. And I laugh at this one because I've been doing this for over 25 years, and my dad still doesn't really understand what I do. And so he calls up with suggestions. So this is about, as I said, that these products, they touch every aspect of our lives. So then the tobacco control funding should touch every aspect of our lives as well. So I want you to think creatively with what you're doing. We're gonna try to fit this to what you want to do. We also, part of this is to build our connection to you, to our greater community, and to our community-based organizations. And we also want to help our community navigate the universe of commercial tobacco control. And on the Amplify side, that loving side, we help organizations to identify funding. We can help you, give you some guidance about applying for funding. We can't write grants for you or things like that, but we can be your guide and help you navigate all of the different aspects of commercial tobacco control. So as I said, with Prop 56, there are lots of resources right now in the state of California. I'm sure you all see the media, you hear the media on the radio and television. All of that is tobacco control funding. And those are jobs for people. So if you like media, if you like public relations, if you like research, if you're interested in those things, there's an avenue for you to pursue in commercial tobacco control. And the Amplify side of the house can help you to identify that. And whether you get funding or not, we are still here to help everybody who's on this call. So how do we integrate commercial tobacco control into the broader context of our lives? Social justice and police reform. We've lived through this horrific year with social media. We're seeing in real time how African Americans are killed in officer-involved shootings and killings. That has to do with commercial tobacco control. Eric Gardner, who was killed in New York by the New York City police for allegedly selling a single cigarette because of the high taxes. So those things actually are flipped onto commercial tobacco control and used to say, don't implement laws that will protect the 45,000 people who die because one person might be targeted. When the issue is, how do we stop that targeting and profiling? And so there are commonalities. So people who are working in police reform and social justice, there's a way that tobacco control can be integrated into that. And an example of that is this afternoon, we're going to be on a call because there are laws that for youth in particular, now that we raised the age to 21, about personal use and possession. So we want cigarettes to be treated as a public health problem, not as the problem for the police. It's not a criminal problem. So that you could incorporate those activities into what you're doing for someone on the call who might be already working in police reform or social justice. That's just an idea. Then the international justice issues. As I said earlier, we're going to be doing some work on the finishing the fight side of the house about the violations to the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. If you're interested in Africa, Ernesta talked to you about, we have the AMP Up Leadership Cohort. And this year we actually have some lay ministers and ministers from South Africa. That piece is not funded by the California Department of Public Health or any funding from California. I want to say that on tape. But we are working with other funders to integrate our broader community into what we do and to have a little more leeway. So if you're interested in that, there's something there for you. If you're interested in health equity, all of our rights stem from our health. We need healthy communities. If you love Black children, our Black children have the highest rates of exposure to secondhand smoke. They have the highest rates of asthma. So if you work with children, there's something there. We have the highest rates of Black infant mortality, low birth weight, and a lot of that has to do with exposure to smoking. How can we help Black smokers? We love Black smokers. We have Dr. Karen Beard, part of our team, who is actually helping just to hold our Black smokers' hands to help them access the services that are already there that we're paying for, like our California Quit line. And there will be more things for menthol smokers as we move forward to get these products offline. How can we increase wholeness? Through Amplify, what are some things that it can increase the wholeness and health of our community? Because if you're doing something healthy, you can't do something healthy and unhealthy at the same time. When you raise children, half of parenting is keeping our children busy. So what are the positive things that we can do with our children and infuse some work on our coalitions or attending some of our county coalitions for tobacco control? And we will explain all this to you for those of you who get funded. And how can we decrease stress? So much of what the things that we're doing that are unhealthy for us are our coping mechanisms for stress. So in the broader context, how can we increase wholeness and decrease stress? So those are just some ways that we're looking for innovation and to tap into what you're already doing so it's not burdensome and onerous on you. Next slide, please, Nicole. So I'm going to get into the eligibility requirements. So I've already covered that we're looking for authentic African-American led and serving organizations. And that would be an organization that has key executive staff with policy and decision-making authority. Board of directors, half African-American. And we know, especially in Southern California, there are many groups that are blended African-American and Latino, and that's fine because we're living together, but we want it to be representation of African-American leadership and staff. You also have to be a 501c3. So you have to have your nonprofit status and you'll have to furnish that letter as part of your package. You can work on nicotine. Our thing is flavors and menthol and flavors, but also e-cigarettes are a big issue. So we will entertain people who are working on vaping or e-cigarettes. Next slide, please. So the application review, there's a cover sheet that you need to fill out, a proposed activity summary with brief description of activities. You're going to have a scope of work that defines what you're going to do, a proposed budget and budget explanation, no more than 2 pages. So with the amount of money we have, we don't need more than 2 pages. You will need proof of your nonprofit status. I think I got that. And you're also going to have to sign a certification of non-acceptance of tobacco funds. So any organization that accepts tobacco funding, you would be ineligible to apply for this funding. You'll have to have an organizational W-9 that has your EIN number on it, and then a copy of general liability insurance. So if you have that already, and you should, because we're in California, you can make a copy of it and send it in, but you also can get it after if you get apply for funding. So that's not a deal breaker if you don't have it right now, but you will have to have general liability insurance and get a rider that adds us in as an activity, which is very easy to do. Next slide, please. So this is the application. We tried to make it as simple as possible. As you can see, it's pretty basic there. And this will be online, so you'll be able to fill out these fields with your name and contact information, etc. You'll see on that second page proposed activity summaries. So a brief description of what you want to do. And as I said, we're open to talk to you about what you want to do, and we can give you some feedback if you're going in the right direction, so you don't have to just do this in the dark. Have an idea, send us an email with the paragraph, and we can say, yes, that's great, or no, I don't think that's a good fit, and save yourself some time. Somebody asked, can you have a fiscal sponsor? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But the fiscal sponsor has to meet that criteria. Okay, next slide, please, Nicole. So this is a scope of work template, and so you'll see the activity of who's going to do what the activity is, who's going to do it, and what the timeline is. This is a quick timeline, so we're looking to get these up and running by March and have people in by I think the deadline officially is June 15th, but it can be a window of 2 to 3 months. So it's just something to augment what you're doing already. We don't want to drag it out. And then there'll be some type of evaluation. So we can also help you with that of how will you measure if you succeeded. So what do you hope to change? So say, for example, if you want to do a symposium, you know, there's a goal of what people are going to get out of attending the symposium. And so that would be part of the evaluation of how we're going to evaluate that. And we will help you with that as well. So basically, I want people to have good ideas, do the best you can, your best effort, and we'll look at them and we'll critique, and we can clean it up on the other end for people that have great innovative ideas. Okay, so we're here to help you succeed. This is a supportive process for those groups that apply and are not funded. We're going to keep you in the queue. We'll also give you some feedback on what could have been done better, tighten it up. This is the first round, and we're going to do this 3 more times. So we want to keep everybody happy. And we want you to be realistic. So we don't expect you to change the world with this amount of money. We expect you to do something small with impactful, and to get you under our wing so that we can work together more in the future. Okay, next slide. So we want your goals to be SMART, and SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Nicole, do you want to just touch on this?
Sure. So SMART is just an acronym that's kind of helpful when you're going through this goal setting process and completing your application. So specific relates to um, being real and concrete with the goal that you're setting. Use real concrete numbers and set real concrete deadlines. Measurable means that you're setting a goal that is trackable, right? You kind of don't want to make a goal that's, you know, kind of abstract and vague and wouldn't leave a paper trail of some sort. Attainable, again, relates back to it being realistic. Choose goals that are possible, something that you have the infrastructure in place to achieve. It can be challenging. We would love for folks to challenge themselves, but don't make it something that is so difficult that it'll be impossible. Challenging, but possible. And we'll also be there to help you. Realistic, again, be honest about your current capacity and how much room you have to expand that capacity with the award that you'll be given, and how they'll be able to help you and your team achieve these goals. And then again, time bound means that you're giving yourself a concrete deadline so that you know how to set up yourself, how to set up these sub goals and these to-do lists or whatever your method is so that you can achieve that goal on time. So we have an example down here of a SMART goal. So by April 2021, which is the time-bound portion, 10 current African-American smokers, being specific, will sign up for cessation courses offered by Amplify. This is measurable because they're signing up for these courses, which will leave a paper trail, whether that is they're doing it physically or online. And you'll be able to quantify and make sure that 10 people actually did that. It's attainable and it's realistic, or is it for your organization? In your day-to-day work, will you be able to encounter 10 African-American smokers who would be interested in signing up for this process? And will you be able to convince them to do so? Back to you, Carol.
Okay, so this is the budget, and so I would add in on that objective, sign up and attend. So we would want them to actually attend, but we'll work with you on tightening things up, and so that's not a problem. But that's a great example. So this is the budget and budget justification. So you will decide how you're going to spend your money, whether people are going to get you're going to have, it could go for staff. Some of the money can go for staff, operating expenses, supplies, postage, etc. This is all pretty self-explanatory. You can have incentives for people, but it's a maximum of $50 per person. So say if you were having some kind of youth serving activity, or adults, because adults need $50 too. You could have that you were going to be giving each person $50 gift certificate to, but it has to be tied to something that they're doing, and that would have to be specific. So that's the budget. If you have some specific questions, we are available to entertain those and to give you some answers. It's not a great amount of money, so this should be a pretty simple process to fill this out, and you just want it to be realistic. Okay, next. This is the certification of acceptance of tobacco funds. All of us are bound by this, and so you have to certify that you do not receive any money, and it has to be someone who has the authority in your organization to sign this form. This is also pretty simple as well. Next one. So that brings us to questions and answers. There are 25 people, so you can put your question in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, since we don't have that many people on, and ask your question if you want to ask it verbally. So do we have a hand raise? Do people have the power to unmute themselves, or do we
Yes,
need to?
they do, and we don't have any hands raised.
Okay, so if you have a question, put it in the chat, or else you can unmute yourself and ask the question. And while we're waiting for people to get their minds together, does anybody else on our team have anything to add in? Tracy or Nicole or Ernesta?
This is Ernesta. I would. Going through the documentation, going through the process, it's going to help them for future grant writing. So all the process is just encouraging, giving you a good practice of what a lot of other grants or proposals are all about. So just definitely give you a good step in the right direction for future funding. This is the same type of process that you will have to go through. So it's definitely a good practice, whether or not you get funded or not, but I highly recommend everybody to go still through the process.
And this is also, we know that this is a compelling issue for our community, but in particular, this time period, it's super important for as many of our organizations to become active and activated around this issue as possible. We have SB 793 on the ballot. So we have legislation that's coming up that people are going to need to vote on about the removal of flavored products from sale in, or from the market in California. And we want to make sure that as many people as possible are educated about that reality and educated in a real way, because there are such staunch disinformation campaigns that are happening through organizations like NAN, which Nicole mentioned, and also there's like a Hookah Commerce Association that wants to make sure that they can still keep, they and the tobacco industry can keep making money off of the death of our people. So they have released these disinformation campaigns, and it's really vitally important that folks like you all who are entrenched in the community already have the information necessary to be able to go out and really engage and educate the folks that you're working with, so that they can in turn educate their fellow community members, et cetera, so that they can make informed decisions.
Great point. And another, I didn't add in on integration of commercial tobacco control, but COVID, of course, as you've seen, the disproportionate deaths and severe illness that Black folks have had, and a lot of that is related to our lung health. For people who are doing work supporting our community through COVID, there are also ways on Amplify that we've integrated into what community, to help support community groups that are working in our community. So that's another area for people to think about as well.
And we have a question that was placed in the chat by Angela Warren. She asked, when will we email the presentation and application to everyone?
That's a Nicole Turkson question. Soon.
Very soon. My goal is to get that out by the end of the day, but definitely by the end of the week.
Yes, and there's a question about the set amount. So we're going to have maximum awards of $3,000. And we're looking to fund perhaps 8 programs. Multiple programs with one agency apply. We're asking for one application per agency. So I would, you could submit more than one, but we probably would only pick one.
And
yes.
Connie Gustafson, do you have a question?
I did, but I think it was answered. And my question was just if this was recorded or if we would get a copy of the PowerPoint. So my question's been answered. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And we encourage you to share with other organizations who weren't. And so we had people who signed up who weren't on the call. They will definitely get the link, but also encouraging you to share with others as well.
We have another question that was placed in the chat by Ava Square. And she asks, if your organization partners with another organization, do both of you have to meet the specific qualifications? Or if one does not meet them, can that organization still participate as a partner, subcontractor, etc.?
Probably no. I'd have to look at that, but just off the top of my head, no, because that would be, you know, only one group can get a grant. And if you're partnering with somebody, if they don't have their own 501c3, if they wanted to get a fiscal sponsor that was not you, if you're funded, then that's possible that they would have to get a different fiscal sponsor. So that's coming from different organizations, different agencies.
There's another question from Karen Thompson about the grant period.
So the grant period, we're looking at rolling this out about mid-March, and it will end mid-June or before. So a 2 to 3 month window to have whatever activity you're doing done. And that's why we want it to be simple, straightforward, challenging, but you know, something that's attainable to do.
There's another question about future awards. Are you anticipating more support for future awards?
So this is the first batch. We will be doing this 2 more times, 3 altogether. We will most likely, we're working so hard, I can tell you people, we are working so hard, all of us, but we will look for some other funding, maybe perhaps aside additionally from the state of California, where we would be able to replicate this and do it in a bigger way. And so there, as Tracy talked about there, we're getting ready to have a big Armageddon fight with the tobacco industry. And I imagine that folks like our wonderful Mike Bloomberg and Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids and the Truth Initiative, that they might be funding on the ground African-American organizations to do some of the work that will need to be done. And we would be a very likely conduit to have that happen. And I will suggest that to them since whoever said that made me think about it. But first we want to get this one going and get the bugs out, because you'll be the first group, you're the first baby in the family. So that's the one that's experimented on. You get all the kinks out, and then we'll see how we can move it forward. And I want you to know that as Californians, we set the model for much tobacco control in the rest of the country. We all have family other places, and we see the health of our family members who are not in California. Not to say that our health is perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we are a model in many ways for other groups. And so you will be a part of that. And we'll be looking to highlight you and to lift you up as well, and to help you for groups to participate with us, like on a webinar like this. Next time you'll come on and say what you did. We do national webinars, so people are looking at how we do what we do.
Question for you, Carol. I'm sorry, actually a statement for the attendees. Please feel free to keep your questions coming. And also we want to encourage you to ask any questions that you might have about tobacco control or about tobacco that will help clarify your understanding about it. Nicole gave us a great overview earlier, but if you have additional questions about tobacco or tobacco control, or also about the award or what we do at AATCLC, please feel free to ask.
Yes, and as part of this process, we will have webinars for our awardees to educate you more about these issues. We'll ask you to attend a coalition meeting. Every county in California has a tobacco control coalition, and now they meet virtually, so you don't have to drive there, you don't have to park, you can just plug in. And so we're going to ask our awardees to participate, at least to attend, to see what those coalition meetings are like and to see how they fit into your community, and to make sure that the coalitions and our county health departments are responsive to our needs, because we don't participate. It's people who work in tobacco control, but we need more community folks to participate so that we can make sure that they're getting input from the community to address our needs.
Good point, Carol. And also, if you're interested in participating in those coalition meetings that Carol is talking about, please contact us. I know Nicole will put contact info up afterwards, but if maybe you're not ready to apply for a CEAA, but you would still like to be active with the coalitions and still, be a regularly active and vocal participant in the tobacco control landscape, please let us know, and we're happy to support you in that process as well.
Yes, thank you so much. And then also in the Finishing the Fight, we have a line item for community members, for individuals, so people get a stipend to participate with us. So if you would like to do that, that's an option, and you can shoot an email to Tracy Brown, and we can see how we would hook you up. So you would actually get compensated for some of your time and expenses to participate as an individual in some of the activities that we do. So is this enough information for people? You can see all the stuff we're doing. It's a lot. So we need help. We need you. Okay. So are we ending early?
Looks like we're
okay. Thank you, Kevin Williams. I have passion. Yes, I'm serious. I'm serious about this. I'm serious about it. So, and we have fun as well, as you can see. So we want to have fun. We want to have not a lot of stress, even though we do, but we want to enjoy. And I just want to say this was a great webinar. Nicole put this together. So excellent, excellent. And we have a great team, and it's just wonderful to be a part of a team that just gets it done. And so we've been getting it done.
Oh, thank you so much, Carol. And thank you to everyone for being here. To just reiterate, the deadline to apply is going to be February 22nd. So please, please, please reach out to us if you have any more questions. Like I mentioned, the link to this recording, as well as the link to the application and all other informational materials, will be sent out by the end of the day tomorrow to give you guys as much time as possible to get this together. And we just really look forward to working with you all and to furthering this very important work in our communities.
Yes. Amen.
All right.
All
So
righty.
everyone have a great rest of the day. Take care of yourself.
Okay.
We'll talk soon. All righty.